Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is founding member of Our Republican Legacy and former Congressman Mickey Edwards. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Sure, glad to be with you.
I want to talk about the election as we sit here a little over 2 weeks after we found out the results. You were a lifelong Republican. You called the GOP a cult under Donald Trump, but Donald Trump did win a second term. What do you make of what happened?
Well, for one thing, it wasn't really about Donald Trump against Kamala Harris. It was a run against a very unpopular administration. Joe Biden's poll numbers were about 41% favorable, right? And Kamala was running on that ticket. There were a lot of issues that people cared about that they didn't feel had been addressed well enough on the border, inflation, things like that. So it was really just there were change elections all over the world where people were saying, we don't like what's going on. We don't know if you're to blame, but you're in charge and it's bad. So that's basically what happened.
Donald Trump overperformed in every demographic almost than his past two elections. So you don't think this is necessarily him gaining popularity, people saying, you know what, I'm converted, I like Donald Trump now. Instead, you think it's a referendum on Democrats and the current administration?
Right, right. Now, I think that probably now that they've had a chance to really see him, Donald Trump's probably less popular than he was. But people didn't vote against him because they didn't like his personality and all. They said, but maybe he'll solve these problems. What we're concerned about is what it costs for the example I always heard was for eggs, but what it costs to put food on the table, what it costs to buy gasoline, what it costs to buy a house. And so people were just feeling frustrated. When you're frustrated, you turn out whoever is in and you try something different.
And Donald Trump, since he was elected, has wasted no time assembling his cabinet. I want to tick off some of the nominees and get your reaction. Here are some of the highlights. Secretary of State, Senator Marco Rubio, Attorney General, now Pam Bondi,
Right.
HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., UN Ambassador Elise Stefanik, Border Czar Tom Homan, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. What do you make of his cabinet as a whole here, wide glance?
Well, some of them are not. I mean, Gates is already gone now, and Pam Bondi is certainly capable of doing the job. She's been a state attorney general for a long time. Uh, I really think what Trump was trying to do, what he wasn't worried so much about the capacity of these people to do the jobs. He was more concerned about, are they going to be loyal to me? I mean, he doesn't see these cabinet secretaries as policymakers. He sees them as implementers of what he wants done, and which is a big change from the way we've always looked at cabinet departments. So I'm not surprised that he picks people for the most part. There's some good ones in there. I think Lee Zeldin will do a good job. I think Pam Bondi will do a good job. But I think mostly what he wants is he has this agenda, some of it out of Project 2025, some of it just the fact that he sees himself more as a dictator than just a normal president. And he wants people who will say, yes, sir.
You're a founding trustee of the Heritage Foundation, which created Project 2025. You're not affiliated with the Heritage Foundation anymore. But as we know, Project 2025 is an extremely right-wing playbook that would act as Trump's blueprint for the first couple of months of his second term in office. Based on
Right.
who we're seeing as these cabinet nominees, do you think that Project 2025 has a chance at being implemented?
Well, Project 2025 is not one thing. It's a whole bunch of different proposals, and I think some will probably pass because there's going to be a Republican majority in both the House and Senate. And right now, the Republicans there are not really the kinds of Republicans I served with for the most part. These are people who want to do what Trump wants to do, and they're going to throw a lot of traditions and norms and probably constitutional procedures out the window. And so they'll get some of it. I think they'll get some of those changes made. but not everything. Because I have to tell you, I took some heart in the way that I saw members of Congress in the Senate stand up against Matt Gaetz. A lot of them saying they have questions uh, about Kennedy, but more important, Donald Trump did not want Thune to be the Republican leader in the Senate, and he is. And so I see signs that the Senate is not going to just roll over and do what he wants.
The allegations against Matt Gaetz were really disturbing. One of them being that he had sexual encounters with minors. He's denied those allegations. But do you think by him withdrawing, by some members of Congress, some in the Senate saying, we have serious questions, there might be a no vote, or we're going to at least have a lot of questions here, do you think that shows that there's some sort of red line here somewhere?
I think it shows that there is some sense in some Republicans who are saying we are United States senators. We don't work for the president. In fact, the Constitution tells us to be a check on the president. And I think if Trump had not named people so nutty for these jobs, that might not have happened. But he really forced senators to look and say, am I going to do my job as a senator, or is he going to just ignore us? They said, well, we're going to stand up and do our job, some of them.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, that you think some parts of Project 2025 will go through. We know that Project 2025 was hundreds of pages. What parts do you think specifically could be implemented once Trump takes the White House?
I think there are some questions still about how much authority executive branch agencies ought to have to do things on their own that may be different from what Congress intended. I think there'll be some things in 2025 that are okay. But I think there are others where he wants to, for example, be able to go after nonprofits, or things like that. And I just don't, I think that'll be a step too far.
Congressman, you wrote this before the election, and you did endorse Vice President Kamala Harris. In the realm of foreign policy and defense policy, which is derived from it, the stakes are greater because wrong steps can be disastrous and irreversible. Do you think when you look at Donald Trump's cabinet, he's implementing the right people when it comes to foreign policy in this country?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you think that being a Fox TV host is adequate to make you an expert in how to defend America. Yes, no, I mean he isn't taking it seriously. Because he says himself that he's going to solve the problem. He's going to end the war in Gaza. He's going to end the war in Ukraine. He's going to step in, and he's not looking for people to do these things. He thinks he can just do everything by his own strength of personality. And I think the people he's been nominating so far, for the most part, people like Hegseth and others, who or the Fox TV guy. I mean, these are not serious people. They are maybe nice people, maybe not, but they're not capable of running the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and their Coast Guard. And these are not people who are serious to run the major agencies of our government.
As a former Republican lawmaker, as a lifelong Republican up until recently, I mean, you're saying that these aren't serious people. What are you thinking right now? Does that scare you?
It terrifies me because they will be in a position to make decisions that could be very harmful. And let's get away from the military for a moment, which is an obvious danger. Kennedy overseeing healthcare and Dr. Oz overseeing healthcare could be very dangerous. Could be, if you start seeing people refuse to take vaccines or vaccines not even being put on the market, because you have a leader in the health field who says, no, we don't believe in that stuff. People will die. People will die. Or if you have people overseeing the economy and supporting tariffs that are going to drive up the cost of everything, that's going to hurt a lot of people. So, no, I think, You can't look back at this and say, what a bunch of clowns. What you have to do is look at it and say, what a bunch of people who are a threat to the well-being of this country.
And do you think senators and Republican senators are going to ask the tough questions here? Do you think that, because what we saw with Gates is that now he's out, do you think that, where is the bar here, do you think, for these candidates getting confirmed?
I think the instinct is to allow a president's nominees to be confirmed. That's the instinct, because presidents are allowed to do that, and he did win the election. I think, though, that he overreached a little bit because he put some names out there that caused people, maybe Senator Murkowski, maybe even Senator Thune, Senator McConnell are going to look at this and say, look, it's our reputations online here too, and we cannot allow these people to be running the agencies of the government. So I think that probably Trump has overreached a little and given a little more backbone to senators than they did have. I'm a little more worried about the House. The Speaker in the House has been talking about allowing the president to make recess appointments, where these people don't even have to go through confirmation. And so I'm more concerned about what's going to happen in the House than in the Senate.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because you said in this conversation that lawmakers in the Republican Party today are different than the ones you've served with. Sure. How are you seeing that? And do you think that that is now the new norm?
It's the new norm. What you see when I served in Congress, and I've told this story many times, if you don't mind me saying it again, I once introduced a piece of legislation, an amendment to a bill. There were about 100 more Democrats in the House than there were Republicans. We were badly outnumbered. The Speaker of the House opposed my amendment. He spoke against it, and I won. I beat him, even with him having all those people. And the way it happened was the Speaker of the House, who was a liberal Democrat, said, I may not agree with this, but that's our institution. A member of the other party still can offer a bill, offer an amendment, speak for it, and we'll vote on it. And a lot of the Democratic members believed that it was okay to not vote the way their leadership told them to vote, but to vote the way they thought they should. The same on the Republican side. I worked for Ronald Reagan. I ran his policy task forces for his campaign. Was very close to Reagan, flew with him, traveled with him. But I voted against him a lot of times when I thought he was wrong, and so did other Republicans. So that's what's missing. People then said, you got to Washington, you were sworn in, and you said, I am a member of Congress. Now there's more of them who will say, I am here as a Republican or a Democrat to fight for my party agenda. So I don't think enough members of Congress understand their responsibility, their obligation, and that they are supposed to represent their constituents as part of the government, not as trailblazers for their political party.
I feel really lucky in my position because I've talked to Democrats and Republicans all about a variety of issues. My favorite conversations are, though, ones where there's bipartisan support, there's bipartisan agreement. You see a Democrat and a Republican coming together on an issue. Those conversations do, though, now seem few and far between. So what do you think is the future of the GOP? Because as we know, we have 4 years of Trump, but we only have 4 more years of Donald Trump because this is his second and last term.
I think the future of the GOP as what it used to be when it was an Eisenhower or a Reagan or even a Bush, I think that's probably gone. I'm not sure that's going to come back. But I think that we can certainly make something a lot closer to it. The reason it's not going to come back is because the issues have changed. You're dealing with mass immigration and things like that were not a problem in those days. So you can't reconstitute the past. It's gone. But I think you can come back to a Republican Party that is committed to a strong defense, that is committed to fiscal sanity, not running up giant deficits, that is committed to following the Constitution, not whoever the leader is. And I think we can do that. We can go back to that's what we're calling, the Republican legacy, what Republicans used to be, which was a normal, rational, Constitution-loving, group of people. And now it's party above all else. And people I know personally, who do not agree with what Trump is doing, but they do it anyway because they're afraid of the party primaries. They're afraid of losing a re-election campaign, and that's changed a lot.
Then when do you think that type of backbone was lost? Because you've said, hey, I've agreed with I was friendly with Reagan. I disagreed with him a lot to his face. I voted against him a decent amount of times. When do you think the backbone was lost of saying privately, hey, I disagree with this, but publicly you're saying a different story?
Oh, it's when Jim Wright was the Speaker of the House, Democratic Speaker of the House, after Tip O'Neill. He decided that because Reagan was so popular and then Bush after him, that he could not let his members vote on issues that Reagan wanted because if they voted, they vote with the Republicans. So he couldn't let that happen. So he started closing down the rules, not allowing Republicans to vote. So Republicans, in frustration, turned to somebody they didn't like very much, but Newt Gingrich. And Newt came in and said, "No, this is going to be a war between the parties." And instead of what members did coming up from the committee structure, it went the other way. The speaker is going to tell the members on his party, "Here's what we do. Here's where we stand. Here's how you're supposed to vote." And so it started there. I lay a lot of it at Gingrich. So you can't, even though I've been a Republican all my life, I can't blame Democrats for everything. This was Jim Wright started it, but Newt Gingrich made it worse. That's when it began to change, and after that, more and more members came to Washington saying, "I have been elected to be carrying the sword for the Republican Party," and it's worse among Republicans than Democrats. Both parties have that, but Republicans have really gotten very bad about saying my first identity is I am a Republican. This is the Republican agenda. This is the Republican candidate. So that's who we support. Whether you like him or not, he's our candidate. And I don't know how we get out of that unless we change the partisan system, which is what I'm trying to do.
Well, Congressman, as we see Donald Trump's second term go into full swing, I hope you come back on and join me and we can talk about it. You are welcome back anytime. Congressman Mickey Edwards, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.